So we are doing a video on the disadvantages of being an entrepreneur. We've also done a video on the advantages. So don't just think we're Debbie Downers hitting down on entrepreneurship. But let's kick it off. What's the one thing that you're going to say, first of all, when it comes to...
It has to be financial risk.
Yep.
The entrepreneurship can eat you up. If you are not innovating and you are not improving, it can absolutely eat you up and spit you out. And you've continuously got to strive to grow and improve. And the financial risk, if you don't, is crazy. So, like, generally speaking, if you're employed, you get a payment and a wage every month. With regards to entrepreneurship, the buck stops with you. If your business doesn't make profit, you don't get paid. Yeah. And the best entrepreneurs, and they say, like, the great leaders eat last. So generally speaking, staff and the entrepreneurs and the managing directors of the business and the CEOs or whoever it is that you're getting to run the business, they get paid no matter what. As an entrepreneur, you're taking all that financial burden and all that financial risk. It was an advantage in the advantages of entrepreneurship, but it's a huge disadvantage for entrepreneurship if things go wrong.
Yeah. So the follow-up for me would be income instability. So for example, if you're doing client work, let's say, you might have 4 clients, but in 2 months' time, 2 of them might bin you off, and that's literally half of your profits and also your revenue gone overnight. So you've always got that income instability. But one thing to obviously counteract that is obviously you can tap into lead generation and stuff like that and try to grow that revenue month on month.
Yeah, I think the hard part is talking about that with regards to the income instability, is that if you went from 4 members of staff down to, 4 clients down to 2 clients, and you've got a couple of virtual assistants or a couple of members of staff, you've now got a very tricky situation, like, do I get rid of the staff? Do I not get rid of the staff? So it's another horrible situation where you might be having to sack or get rid of staff, which when you're employed and not an entrepreneur, you might not have to deal with anything like that. This situation now puts you in awkward situations of being like, okay, now because the income's not coming in, I now need to get rid of the staff. And hiring and firing. Hiring's nice, but firing, it's not a nice job to do. Sometimes you go home and you've just had to fire a couple of members of staff and you're like, you are a bit of a Debbie Downer. So I think that is a big disadvantage of being an entrepreneur.
We have done a video on solopreneurs as well. So in some cases, people might decide to be a solopreneur. If you guys do want to check that out, there'll be a link to it down in the description. But the next one for me would be the long hours. Sometimes you will do 28 hours in a day and you might be doing that for a long period of time as well. Like, it might not just be a one-off, it might be for multiple months, and you might feel like you're not getting anything out of it. You might, again, like what you said, great leaders do eat last, and if you are putting in the hours, it might be hundreds of hours prior to you actually seeing any income coming in. So bear that in mind if you are going to go down the entrepreneurial route.
Yeah, I mean, it's a crazy one, the long hours, because it's an advantage. If you in the link in the description, if you check the advantages of being an entrepreneur, we talk about the flexibility that you have, that you only need to work 2-3 hours a day if you want to. But generally speaking, if you're an entrepreneur, you want growth, you want success, then you need to put the long hours in to have that growth and have that success. So what ends up happening is, even though you don't need to work 8 hours a day and work your 9 till 5 job, what ends up happening and what you end up doing is you end up working, especially in the growth stage, for me, I'm up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I could still be on my laptop till 12 o'clock at night sometimes. And them long hours at times just feel like you're on that hamster wheel where you're just going round and round and round and you're not getting anywhere. And it can be very, very tough, especially if you've started in the wrong business sector or industry and stuff like that. You really want to get it to work. And sometimes you just got to understand, do you know what? I'm going in the wrong direction here. You got to learn how to colour and start again maybe. And that's where entrepreneurship can have very, very long working hours. On the flip side, if you are very successful and you've been in the industry for a while, it can be an advantage that you don't need to work many hours if you've got like delegation and stuff set up generally speaking, me being me, once I've delegated it, I start something new. So there is always seems to be long hours like, oh yeah, next year I'm going to calm down a little bit. But yeah, there's always long hours involved in entrepreneurship.
5 years now, and every year you say, I'm going to calm down next year. And it's you actually don't calm down, you do the opposite.
Yeah.
So the next thing that I'm going to say, and it's actually not on our list, which is a little bit of a weird one, but getting a mortgage, getting any types of loans, any types of mortgages, especially in the UK. I don't know what it's like in the US. It's an absolute nightmare, especially if you have just recently potentially left your job and you're potentially looking to get a bigger house. So getting a mortgage in the UK, it's literally like...
It kind of goes in line with the income instability. Like, they don't know whether you're going to get paid next month. So, like, if you've not got that income coming in, and that's where sometimes some of the most happy people in the world are entrepreneurs, not entrepreneurs. We've actually got a video on that as well, like with regards to entrepreneurship, where you might be a number 2 in the business, but you're guaranteed the wage that's coming in. You still get some profits out of the business, but you're not having to take all that financial risk in there. But a big one that people talk about quite a lot is stress. So, I mean, I try to control the way I think, and I think perception can kind of eliminate stress at times. But I can understand why some people might end up being stressed if they lose a client through no fault of their own, and they're having to get rid of staff, and they don't like the idea of firing staff, and they don't like the idea of doing the long hours. Then some people can say that it's stressful in being an entrepreneur. I think I try to use, whether you call it stress or failing or whatever it is, as being the fuel. And sometimes I thrive off stressful situations, but a lot of people see it as being a disadvantage to entrepreneurship. What's your thoughts on stress as being a disadvantage?
Your stress tolerance is a direct correlation of how much you will earn. That's my saying. So if you're going to, I don't know, start crying after one client leaves you and you need to sack a member of staff, and that's your stress tolerance, you're probably not going to get far. And that's probably going to sound pretty brutal to some people. But if, for example, you lose a client, you're like, right, okay, I need to spend more money on advertising. I need to learn why that client's left. Maybe because I didn't reply to an email, or he phoned and I don't know, I was on holiday or whatever. As soon as you can put the pieces together and you're like, right, okay, I need to do this and I need to do that. And then essentially it's just a big jigsaw. So by the end of it, if you're like, right, okay, if I do these 12 things, it's going to eliminate more clients leaving me, and it's going to mean that I'm going to lose less money next month, then brilliant. But that's my thoughts on stress.
I think that's a great way of putting it. And I also think that I always try to turn everything, if I've got an unhappy situation or a stressful situation, I always turn it on its head, and I flip it the other way around. And what I end up doing is going, all right, how can I celebrate this? And you're like, you're crazy. What are you going on about? And I'm like, I've learned something. I've been put into, whether you call it a stressful situation or a failure or whatever. How can I use this as fuel? How can I improve upon that to not get myself back in that situation again? Okay, I lost the client. Well, why did I lose the client? Exactly what you said. Why did I lose it? How can I prevent that from happening further down the line? Or if I know it's going to become part of the norm, my churn rate is after 12 months generally that they're leaving, or after 4 years generally they're leaving, I now know that, okay, if I know what my churn rate is, now I need to know that I need to acquire more new customers. And what you just do is you start to know your KPIs, know your numbers. And of course, growth is never linear. Growth is always like this. So when you're down here, your next big spurt might be up here, but then you're going back down and stuff. And on the lows, learn out why you're at a low and kind of use that as being the kind of energy to go, right, okay, now I know this is not going to happen again.
Yeah, definitely. The next one that I'm going to state, and we've kind of touched on this, is difficulty scaling. So, for example, if you have got an inconsistency in inbound inquiries for your business, and you're really trying to scale out a sales team, or you're really trying to scale out SOPs and hiring VAs and stuff like that, if you've got an inconsistent in growth of revenue, it's going to be very hard to scale out a team or buy that bigger office. So again, I think kind of going back to what you were saying before and what you were saying yesterday, everything flows downstream from lead generation. So if you've got an inconsistency of leads coming in every single month, maybe you're relying on word of mouth marketing, for example, you don't know what's going to come in a month's time. You don't know what's going to come in 3 months' time. So I think being able to, first of all, figure out where your weak points are to then being able to actually scale out your business, that's very important.
Yeah, I think another massive disadvantage of entrepreneurship is lack of support. Right now, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it, like I just said before, I'm going to flip it on his head. In my advantages of entrepreneurship, I said networking was one of the biggest advantages of entrepreneurship. I absolutely love networking. I think the whole digital marketing community is brilliant. You bounce ideas off each other, you help elevate each other and stuff like that. But not all industries are like that, right? So there's times where there can be, for some entrepreneurs, that lack of support. Now, if you think about this when you was growing up, if you were a 2-year-old and you're growing up and you do something wrong, you've got your parents that say, oh, don't do that, right? And then when you go to primary school, you start doing something and you throw a toy and the teacher says, right, you know how to do that and you have to sit in the naughty step or whatever it is. Then you go to primary school or you go to secondary school and again, you do something wrong and you've got a teacher to say, no, you shouldn't do that. You go and get your first job. You've got a supervisor that tells you what you should and shouldn't be doing. You've got a boss that tells you what you should and shouldn't be doing. If you go and play for a football team or a rugby team or whatever team you're playing for, you've got a coach and a manager that tells you what you should and shouldn't be doing. When you're an entrepreneur, if you are not networking, the buck stops with you. You are the top. And do you know what? I'm writing a book at present about it. And it's like, it can be very, very lonely at the top if you do not allow others in to educate you and learn to strive to improve every single day. That lack of support that you have at the top can be a massive disadvantage to do with entrepreneurship.
Yeah, definitely. I think the just as a follow-up to what you've just said is the lack of structure as well. So again, what do your days look like? Obviously, if you are a person that's got a 9-to-5 job, you know, right, okay, I need to wake up at 7 a.m, I need to get into work for 8 or 8:30 or whatever. Then I'm working there, 5 p.m, that's when the work stops. But a lot of entrepreneurs, they might get sidetracked, they might have too many things going on, like yourself. You might be writing a book one day and then ranking a website the next day, who knows, right? But that's one commonality that I see in a lot of entrepreneurs. They do not know how to structure their day, or they don't know how to structure their time overall. And then they end up doing 10% of 40 different things.
Yeah. I think another big disadvantage that people talk about with entrepreneurship, and a lot of time I disagree with this one, but people talk about competition, right? And they say that it's a disadvantage of entrepreneurship where I love competition, if I'm being honest with you. But I need to put it in there because every person who's done a disadvantages of entrepreneurship have put in competition in there. For me, an entrepreneur thrives off competition and they look to improve and be a better version of themselves and being able to try to beat out competition. But the thing that I would say in there that can be a disadvantage is when you're trying to innovate something new, you don't know what your competition are trying to innovate, and you can end up launching something that then somebody else is already launching at the same time. Yeah. Or sometimes you get yourself in a bit of trouble where you launch something and there's certain trademark infringements, there's patent infringements, and sometimes you didn't do the proper research, so there's risk involved with, as you're looking to scale what your competition are doing and what legal IPs that they might own that might stop you, and you might have put quite a lot of time into doing something and go, do you know what, that's already in the marketplace. Or you go and do something and your competition do it and there's just not the return on investment there. So I think that's you could say that's a disadvantage of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, definitely. And then another thing that I'm going to mention is difficulty finding customers. So for example, if you're not marketing yourself, nobody's going to find you. You could be the best brain surgeon in the world, but if nobody knows who you are or where you're based or what your services actually do, nobody's going to reach out to you. So again, this kind of ties back into the lack of growth every single month.
Yeah.
So if again, like if you're not consistently growing out your customer base, and if you're not consistently getting new inquiries, new inbound inquiries, or potentially even outbound, you might be doing telesales, for example. But if you're not getting that every single month, and if you're kind of just twiddling your thumbs hoping for the best, you're not going to grow an actual business.
Yeah, I think the last one that I want to touch upon as being probably the biggest disadvantage of being an entrepreneur, and the stats don't lie on this, is mental health. The amount of entrepreneurs and business owners that suffer from mental health, it's astonishing, the numbers. So people like seeing the influencers on social media and they think they've got this perfect life. Comparison is the thief of joy. Yeah. A lot of these people that dedicate their time and who've made it to be in the top 1% in the world as being a very successful business owner, on the deathbed kind of say, I wish I'd given more time for my health and for fitness and for family and for experiences. So at times mental health can be a massive problem with entrepreneurship, because it's in my opinion, it's an addiction. Yeah. Like, you're addicted to growing, you're addicted to doing this kind of networking and just always looking to evolve. And at times it can eat you up. And at times, this is where I'm saying it can be lonely at the top if you allow it to be. And I can understand certainly why, when things aren't going that well, and let's say the algorithm updates changes within SEO or something ends up happening, and you're having to get rid of staff, or you feel like you've let people down. There might be times where, like, if you're employed, this doesn't happen, but as an entrepreneur, you can end up with risked everything. You might lose your house. You might be homeless. Your kids might be homeless because you've gone and remortgaged the house to go in on this business that you think really works. And something happens, you don't realise all that added stress and all that added thing of what you can do. You've let your family down. You can let your friends down if you are employees down. The buck stops with you. And from a mental health point of view, it could be seen as being a massive disadvantage of being an entrepreneur.